it's Nichol Spohr here today for SimonsSaysStamp.com, and today I am showcasing a couple of cards and coordinating envelopes created with components from the March 2020 Simon Says Stamp card kit called Stronger Together. We're going to be using the 6x8 stamp set from the kit as well as the Hello Wafer Thin Die, the watercolor pencils included in the kit, the craft tacky glue, and then one of the cardstock colors as well. So there's still lots of other components in the kit, but I really wanted to focus in on this gorgeous Stronger Together 6x8 stamp set. We're going to start by taking some watercolor cardstock. Because these are watercolor pencils, I really felt like I might get the best results with watercolor cardstock, so I did take some from my stash. This is just some Canson watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to position some of the floral and leaf images from the Stronger Together stamp set around my background. This has been trimmed to 4 by 5¼ inches. I'm going to stamp these with some antique linen Distress Oxide ink. I basically was just looking for an ink that is water-based so that it's going to kind of just blend into the background with some no-line coloring with these watercolor pencils. And I'm just playing around with different placement. We're going to start with the blue florals card and then move on to red. The first card is very much inspired by the colors and pattern papers included in the kit. And the second card is just a bold pop of red. I wanted to do something completely different, yet still pretty much very similar design as the first card. But I wanted to show how it really works for any color combination that you like. I'm not worried about masking or anything like that. I'm simply just getting those stamps put down there. I'm using my sentiment from that stamp set as a guide. The hello will be die cut from the background once I'm finished coloring it all in. I am using a Bestie to make it easy to stamp and position these several times. After I did the initial stamping, you will notice in the finished card that there are even more floral images around the perimeter of the design. I ended up filling in even more. I'm using 3 shades of the blue watercolor pencils included in this month's kit. You're getting a set of 24 watercolor pencils, and you can see how beautifully they blend. So pretty, very easy to use, and they're really working fantastic for this no-line coloring design. I used 3 shades of blue, 2 shades of green, and then a brown pencil for 6 pencils total for this card. I would get anxious and want to blend it out to see how it was going to look, but normally I tried to color in multiples to make it go a little bit faster after I did the first few, and then I could just go in and watercolor them all at once. I have sped this up quite a bit, however I have left the coloring in the video to show you the complete process from start to finish. I made sure to have a pencil sharpener handy so I could sharpen the watercolor pencils often while coloring in, as I think you get the best results, especially when tracing the stems and things with a sharper pencil. So now I really am going and coloring lots of the green at once. Where this one leaf was overlapping one of the blooms, I went in and just colored that in real quick as well. So adding in the dark green, a little light green, a little brown. I think I forgot the brown for some of these, so I'll go back and add that in a bit. You can add it later. I found as I was working on these, I kind of liked it better when I added the brown before watercoloring, but I did do it both ways for these cards. Now, part of the reason I went back in once I'm done coloring in all of these initial stamped images is that I felt like I needed more blue. It is really leaf heavy. There are lots of leaves in this, and while I really like that, I felt like I needed just a few more blooms, at least a couple more, and then maybe even I decided another little branch coming in from the side, which you'll see here in a second. We're just going to finish coloring in these two blue flowers. I did use a water brush pen. You could use a paintbrush dipped in water if you prefer. There's lots of ways to do this. I tried to make sure that my water brush pen was not super wet, that it was fairly dry before I take it to the paper so that the ink wasn't pooling in each area too much. I know in a couple spots, at least I'm pretty sure on the red card, I got a little too much water and I ended up having to go back over it and try to fix it a little bit. So the less water you use, the better. If you get more control with a paintbrush dipped in water, I would definitely recommend doing that instead. We will blend out these last few leaves. So pretty. And then we'll just move on to the ones up top. I always like to have them kind of in diagonal corners from each other. That's where I start, and then I did fill in, as I mentioned, a few more leaves and flowers, but I start with kind of down in that lower left corner in the top right. And I'm just going to double check. And instead of using my MISTI, I went ahead and worked kind of slow and individual. So now I just used an acrylic block to stamp in a few more images. Starting with this flower up above, I felt like especially this corner needed just a little touch of blue. And then the corner was missing a little something. I felt like that bloom is just kind of hanging out. So we'll actually take an individual leaf and I'm going to stamp that up in that corner and then even down below, which I'll show you here in a second. There it is. And we're just going to fill those in real quick. And then I added another flower in the bottom right corner and then a leafy little branch coming in from the side. Those will be the final two stamped images before I let the background completely air dry so that I can die cut my sentiment and also stamp the phrase right on that background. So one of the things I really wanted to do with these cards today is create a coordinating envelope. I loved a couple of the designs from this Stronger Together stamp set. To me, really work well with an envelope. So I die cut the envelope shapes from watercolor cardstock so I could do the same technique on the front of the envelope using the Simon Says Stamp A2 V-flap envelope dies. And I'm just going to add a couple of stamped images there before I assemble the envelope and color those in. So this is all exactly, pretty much exactly like the card front. We're just decorating the envelope now. And I tend to keep most of my images kind of over to one side or the other out of the way of where I'm going to write the addressee's name. But we're going to add some stamping and embossing on both of the envelopes as well using the Simon Says Stamp Good Mail Day stamp set. So really super fun. I love the finished set. And these dies make creating your own envelopes so easy. So here I did color all the green parts in first, watercolor those, and then we'll just add the blue for the blooms. Really keeping it simple here, but very effective. Really excited about these matching envelopes. The possibilities are absolutely endless with whatever, you know, cardstock that you want to use. As I mentioned, I used the watercolor cardstock because I wanted to be able to watercolor on this. But if you are doing another kind of coloring, just know you can create your own envelope from pretty much any paper. And it just gives you that matching set. I think it would be beautiful to stamp a whole bunch of maybe even thank you kind of cards and create the envelopes and give them as a gift set to somebody. I think that would be super pretty. While the envelope front is drying, we're going to move back to our card front, stamp the sentiment from the Stronger Together stamp set using the Simon Says Stamp Clear Embossing ink and heat embossing with antique gold embossing powder. Then we're going to take the Hello die that comes in the kit and die cut that from the background and keep all of those pieces. We're also going to die cut the Hello 4 times from the Cornflower blue cardstock included in the kit. We're going to go back to our envelope and stamp Happy Mail 4 using, that's from the Good Mail Day stamp set. Use clear embossing ink, heat emboss with the antique gold embossing powder. We'll go ahead and set that back aside. And we want to just add the side flaps to our envelope. I'm using a double-sided adhesive. Line those up. I'm using a bone folder to make sure it's nice and secure. We'll scoot on over to the other side. Make sure that's lined up. Use our bone folder. Fold those flaps in, add a little adhesive just to these sides here, the bottom of each of the side flaps, and then we'll fold the bottom up to secure that. And there is our envelope. How cute is that? Now to finish our card, I am going to put some adhesive on the back of our panel and glue this to a white top fold card base. Then using the glue included in the kit, we are going to glue together our Hello dies, one on top of another. So we've got the first one that's going to inlay into the background, and then we're going to take any of those little pieces from the Hello and inlay those inside from the piece we die cut from the background. And then we're going to stack these one on top of another. The reason I did the color as the stack is from the side, you're going to get that hint of color. So for this card with the blue flowers, we're getting a hint of blue on the sides from the raised Hello. For the red floral card, the next one we're going to be creating, we're going to use red cardstock back behind our die cut Hello, and it just gives you that illusion of the red. So that's the one we're going to work on now, and I'm going to stamp a little bit different design, but it's still pretty similar. I'm just using a different image along the side and combining a couple different things, but very, very similar to the first card as far as coloring with my 2 green colors for the leaves, and then adding in the brown. We're just going to use a couple of shades of red for the petals, but pull in some brown for those to kind of add that dimension and shading for each of the petals that shows those off a little bit better. And I played around with the reds as I got started to see what I liked. And then as I got more confident, I worked my way a little bit quicker. It's always a little bit slower at first until you get that right color combination, at least it is for me. These pencils work fantastic. I'm really excited to try them with some other images. Such a nice little perk and bonus, I think, in this month's or in the March kit. So I hope you guys are as excited about those as I am. It's been a while since I've played with watercolor pencils, and it really kind of ignited my enjoyment of this medium again, and I'm, as I mentioned, excited to try them with some other types of images. So we're just going to continue to color in these flowers. And you can see I started a little bit more frugally, I guess, on this one. I only stamped a couple images in that bottom left corner, or I stamped one, and then I will add more as I go. I find that I really like to kind of trace out the design with my darkest color. That's going to also help hide the stamped line a little bit for that no line look. And then I tend to kind of pull a little bit of that dark out from the side, add in a little dark shading if I want to, then blend out with my lighter color a bit. And then I clean the tip of my water brush pen often. That's going to help give a little bit lighter area to the center of each of those leaves, almost a little highlight area, if you will. And I'm just cleaning the tip of my water brush pen on a dry rag or paper towel or a scrap piece of paper, whatever, just to make sure I'm not cross-contaminating the red into the green or the green into the red. And I did add in a little bit more brown, and you can see what a huge difference this makes in depth and dimension. Even just the single image is super pretty, and I think it would make a lovely card with the sentiment stamped kind of along that right side. So now I'm going to go back in with some additional images, and we are going to stamp those in and add a little bit more. Because if one is good, more is better. Once I have all of these stamped, I'm going to simply color all of these in just like I did the first image. And then we can go ahead and finish our card with some stamped and embossed sentiments and die cut greeting. I'm going to stamp and emboss this Stronger Together sentiment right on the background. We're using the Simon Says Stamp Clear Embossing Ink and the Antique Gold Embossing Powder. Next to white embossing powder, this antique gold embossing powder is probably my favorite. I like to use the powder tool first. That's going to help keep the embossing powder right on the stamped sentiment and hopefully not migrate anywhere else. I had really good luck with this background because remember, all of these images were wet at one time, so I did make sure that my background was really good and dry before I went to stamp and emboss. If you're in a hurry, go ahead and take a heat tool and heat set the watercoloring before doing this step. I love the gold embossing on this as opposed to black stamped sentiment. I think the gold really gives a nice elegant touch to the card. We're going to die cut the hello die from the background and do just what we did on the last card where we stacked the red, this time red die cut hellos, and inlaid them into the card design, and then finish with the die cut right on top. It's going to give it a little bit of that spotlight type feel. I'm just making sure this is as even as possible with my little handy dandy Lawn Fawn ruler. We'll run that through our die cutting machine and then simply assemble the card just like we did for the first one. For both cards, I finished with a scattering of the Simon Says Stamp MWAH sequins. For the red card, I implemented some of the red sequins from the pack, and for the blue card, I used mostly clear, white, and gold. I'm going to attach those with a little liquid adhesive and then go ahead and finish the center of these sequins with some Nouveau crystal drops in pale gold. I love how this gives those sequins a little bit of a finished effect. So let's let the Nouveau crystal drops dry, and I will quickly stamp the envelope for this card. So for the last one, I used kind of the long stem image and then the floral image. This time I'm just going to use that same floral image, and we're going to use a couple of different sentiments from the Good Mail Day, same stamp set that I used for the last envelope. I did start with the floral first, and I'm just going to trace that out with my green markers, color in the leaves a little bit, we'll color in the blooms, and then we want to make sure that everything is really good and dry before we stamp and emboss our sentiments, because these are even going to overlap the stamped image and colored image just a little bit. So I want to make sure any water there might be left on this is dry before I do that step. We're just going to color these in. Again, I'm tracing out the petals with my darker colors and then pulling out and ending with the lighter color before adding the water brush pen to blend everything out. I don't know about you, but I would be thrilled to get an envelope in the mail that looks like this, that says "not a bill," which you'll see here in a little bit. I think that's hilarious. The Good Mail Day has some really great little fun, kind of snarky sayings in it, and that's one of them. So really, really cute and fun. We just want to add the side flaps then to our envelope, which I'll just do that, or I'm going to fold those in. I might wait till I have stamped my sentiment before I assemble the envelope all of the way. I am going to use the Misty to stamp those sentiments so I can make sure and get a really good stamped impression. I would hate to ruin the envelope after I've already done all that stamping and coloring. So I'm going to line up the phrase "A Handmade Hello" and then the phrase "not a bill" in the lower left corner. And we're going to stamp those with the clear embossing ink and heat emboss with the white embossing powder. I did ink up the sentiments twice and stamp them twice before removing the envelope, sprinkling on the embossing powder, and heat setting it. And you can already see just with adding the embossing powder how cute this is going to be. If any embossing flakes get where you don't want them, you can always remove them with a dry paintbrush. I'm going to heat set this now, finish assembling the envelope, and my cards are all finished. We'll take a final look at the finished card and envelope that I just created so you can see the set all together. And I'm just again using a bone folder to make sure that the envelope is nice and secure. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this set of 2 cards and matching envelopes created with components from the Simon Says Stamp March 2020 card kit, Stronger Together. Please be sure to visit the Simon Says Stamp blog for more information. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.